What do you find to be the most stressful part of Rust? For me, it's logging in to find out if I even still have a base. After working my arse off for the entire day before, the last thing I need is to wake up without a base and all my hard work gone. So how do we fix that? How do we make sure you don't get raided and completely wiped out overnight? To do this, we're going to be focusing on two things. First is making a base that isn't worth raiding. This is a base that from the outside immediately looks like it's going to cost too much to get in and not be worth the loot you find inside. And second is we're going to be installing a failsafe into that base so that even if a raider does decide they want to go inside, they don't get everything. So how do we make a base that raiders won't want to raid? Well, to start out, we're going to be making sure to use one of the most established and solid base designs in Rust, the 2x2. One of the easiest designs to honeycomb and securely store your loot, a 2x2 is a tight fit, meaning the potential loot inside is rather minimal and the raid costs are fairly high. To make matters even worse, we had a bunker inside. Peeking through that honeycomb, raiders will be able to quickly spot and identify that this is a bunker base. But isn't that a bad thing? Not in this case. For one, pairing it with a key-locked front door, a raider looking at this knows that it's going to be expensive, and they probably won't get much. Expecting that inner layer to be at least sheet metal and possibly high-qual metal, this is going to be an investment to raid. But it's a bunker, and knowing it's a bunker, you've got two raid options. Either raiding in the opposite side of the bunker, or raiding it from the top down. But in either case, you're going to have to go through honeycomb and then work your way backwards throughout the rest of the base to get any extra loot. So for most raiders, it just won't be worth it. But what if you've made enemies? What if the raider just isn't smart enough to do the math and just starts blowing in? Well, that's where the Keeper 2.0 really shines. If someone decides to break into this monstrosity of a bunker base, they're going to quickly find themselves at a loss. With the TC in none of the expected spots, if they really want to find it, they're going to have to do some digging. Now that we've established that this is a bunker base that they probably won't want to get into, let's go over what's inside the base. Coming into your standard airlock area where they won't be able to get any further into your base unless you let them, we have a jump up door storage. Here we've got a couple quick drop boxes and 3 furnaces that we can use for cooking. Coming inside past our roof bunker base design, we have a garage door. Linking in past there, we have a shotgun trap that will trigger if anybody tries to come in, so you don't have to seal this bunker unless you're going offline. That means that anytime anyone comes in over that roof piece and past this garage door, this trap will instantly start shooting, breaking this twig and sealing the bunker. With 3 boxes, a campfire, and 2 small boxes down here for loot, another couple small boxes and a locker right here. Coming into even more storage and utility options, and our final storage room. Now while overall this storage isn't the highest it can possibly be, it's more about min-maxing the space and storage options. A player playing inside this base is gonna have to make sure they use the most out of the storage that they have, mainly using this base to make sure that you still have something the next day to play with. Obviously, you've seen going throughout this entire base, we don't have a visible TC. And for that, I'm going to show you very shortly why they can't find it. Now for this build, we do have to do things a little bit differently, so we're going to be creating a temporary structure. This structure is going to allow us to create what's going to be a vertical pixel gap. Now you'll notice when I run into this corner, my character kind of moves and then eventually settles down. Once your character settles down, you're going to want to look to the one direction that is free, closest to you, and place your first triangle foundation basically as low to the ground as possible for the rest of the build to be that minimum height. Once that's placed, move to the left or right, depending on how you build, and once you can place this blue triangle, take it as far back to the original triangle as you can. You'll notice that it kind of gets stuck at a point, and basically the last point where it's stuck, you'll want to place it, and then go and double check that you can place a triangle. Now about 1 in every 3 times doing this, it's not going to work. You're going to have to break out those foundation pieces and start again. Running into this back corner, waiting for it to stop moving, placing that first triangle, and bringing the second triangle in, and eventually we get that blue placement in between. Now just finally, to make sure that you've done this correctly, it is worth placing 2 half walls. You'll notice that they are on a different height. And what we're going to want to do is, using the triangle that is now higher, we're going to place a half wall, place a triangle out, and then place a triangle floor frame. At this point, we're going to go ahead and place walls on both sides, upgrade those walls and foundations, and upgrade a roof piece. Next, throw your TC right in here. Lock that up and get anybody you need to nearby. Throw in any materials you have to throw in. And then we're going to place a half wall on top of this piece. Once that's placed, you can go ahead and destroy that bottom triangle. You're going to want to make sure you destroy the frame before we finish upgrading this. Next, go ahead and place that. And at this point, you should be able to just destroy all of the pieces that we don't need. And we can seal this in. From this point, you could just actually start with your 2x2 footprint, but I do recommend honeycombing this base as quickly as possible, so for this build purposes, I am going to go into the full honeycomb. For the front, you should use entirely low triangles, while the entire back section, we're going to use raised triangles. Now, the reason we're doing that is the raised triangles actually have considerably less security when blowing in from a foundation level than a lower triangle, but low triangles increase the raid cost into your base by a significant amount. So for any area that we want to protect, such as loot rooms or even our bunker mechanic, we're going to want to make sure that we use lowered foundations and place the extra half walls in those areas. Now for the inside of this, I do recommend we're going to use a full wall, and the reason we're doing that is to separate this bottom section of the loot room from a top section of the loot room. So for that reason, these two should be large walls, while the outside being smaller half walls, increasing the raid cost into your base. This will slightly increase the cost of your upkeep, but the security it adds is worth it in my opinion. This wall also has to be a full wall in order to make the bunker mechanic work. From here, we are going to fully seal everything in and go ahead and add our honeycomb as we would with any other base. Now for these areas, I do recommend adding the extra half wall or the extra ceiling piece in. It is going to increase raid costs from splash damage, and it can be worth it in certain situations. Of course, you don't have to, and so it really becomes how paranoid you are and how much you want to mess up things for a raider. For this front section here, you can go ahead and have it be a full jump up, but I like to have the lower jump, which does sacrifice some interlocking door protection mechanics. That's something you're going to want to think about as to which one is the better option for you. This section here we're going to leave open, as that's going to function for a furnace. And we're just going to go ahead and close this off. Of course, we still don't have a bunker in here, and our TC is wide open, so those are both things we're going to want to take care of. We're going to first finish closing off this section, and of course, this is why we went ahead and used the half walls. Doing that is going to make this right here become its entire own separate entity that requires blowing into both areas if someone wants to get through. By making sure you use these half walls hidden in behind, it'll make sure that rocket splash damage can't attack both at the same time. We're going to place our double doors throughout the entirety of this base, except for this front area here, as we're not going to be able to place into this socket with the way the bunker functions. We will, however, be able to put a doorway into here. You can have this be a single or double doorway, it won't matter too much. This section right here will function as a drop spot for furnaces. Right here, if you did want a shelf space, I would recommend ghosting it through the wall. Now, this can be done during construction, or you'd have to build this afterwards, bringing it in from right here with temporary shelving and connecting over. Next, we're going to seal in our TC. Finally, you can actually do this at just about any stage, but I like to make sure I get a door down as soon as possible, as getting into your TC can be a little problematic without a workbench. I will show you how to access your TC. As you can see, we can't actually get through that gap. And if you forgot to remove that floor triangle piece, this is where you'd get screwed because you wouldn't be able to get through the gap. But next, we're going to go ahead and place our roof piece, which is going to act as our bunker. It can sometimes be a pain to get your boxes placed over here, but when we do open up our bunker using a floor frame mechanic, it does get significantly easier and less problematic. Starting with this upper loot room, we're going to place our first box in this back corner. Then we're going to place a barbecue. You can go ahead and skip this barbecue, only using a small box instead. Now, when you place the barbecue, you want to make sure that the lid opens away from the box, because as you can see, the barbecue doesn't really get as close when it's opening that way. But once it's placed, it's not going to matter anymore. And then we're going to slap one more box here on the side. The reason we do this is we can actually still slap a box right between them, giving us this much more box placement. That's an extra 12 slots that you do not want to miss. Next, for the side, I also recommend barbecues. Now, this recommendation is actually slightly different, as the reason we're placing barbecues in this instance is lootability. Simply from the ground, it's going to be much easier with a box with a barbecue there, and you'll be able to loot underneath and also have the option of looting the barbecues. Now, you can take it one step further and also add box placement underneath each of the barbecues. And I believe you can even get a campfire in the middle there. That would only be if you're trying to min-max the heck out of the storage, because it does get significantly harder to loot everything, as you would have to jump up onto the shelf every time you want to loot those back boxes. For that reason, I recommend we not use these small boxes in the front, as it just makes looting a lot easier. Alright, and down here we're going to be using the 3 and 3 box placement method. I do recommend opening your... To place the boxes down here, I do recommend closing your bunker again, as that will get the roof piece out of your way here. And then we're going to ghost through the wall, making sure that it's coming through straight. If it's not straight, you just use the grout to line you up underneath, or just keep wiggling the box back there, making sure that it's all coming through at the same time. Once you get that blue placement, you just want to make sure you've got a pixel or two of movement, not pulling too far forward, and then slam that box all the way to the right. If you've done that correctly, you should be able to place a box right here. Again, making sure to place it as close to the wall as possible. You might need to move left or right, or you can come up and jump on this box here. Next, we're going to place one more box in this back corner. And we could do the 4 and 4 box method down here. However, it can be harder to place, and it actually doesn't have as much storage capacity. Instead, we're using the 3 and 3 method, which actually makes looting a lot easier later as well. And once those are placed, we can go ahead and place a triangle. Now, you can place the triangle on one of the back walls or this wall here. It doesn't matter too much, as we are going to be getting most of our looting by jumping onto this small box. Now, back here, you can go ahead and place 2 more boxes easily, either in this formation or right here. And you can actually get a couple small boxes here as well, though the placement there doesn't always work out, and looting is actually fairly easy down here. Now, down on this side, we are doing very similar. However, things do have to go a little bit differently to make this bunker work. So we're going to first place our initial 3 boxes. And once you have those 3 boxes placed, this is where things get a little different. We're going to place a campfire right here. And then on either side of that campfire, we're going to place a small box very close to it, pointing into it. Now, getting into the TC is finally accessible. Coming over here, you'll notice that you've got that nice little height where you can see through the crack a little bit. One thing I recommend doing is acquiring a weapon. Even with just a basic weapon like a crossbow, zooming in and getting access to that TC becomes considerably easier. Now, as long as we continuously come to this campfire pit here, you're going to find yourself at the right height to get that every single time. It's simply just the way we're sandwiched in between all of the boxes and with the campfire below us that we end up right there. To an unsuspecting raider, that is nothing. And with a lock on the TC, they're not going to be able to get in there anyway. You'll notice with just a small box or a big box, you can't really access the TC. However, there is a second trick for accessing the TC, and that's a siren light. A siren light will automatically put you at the right height every single time, giving you that access to the TC. I would still recommend using an item or a crosshair in the middle of your screen just to line yourself up a little better. A seed can also be useful. However, having a siren light there would kind of give things away to raiders, so in that case I do recommend using the box method, which still puts you at that same height without being as obvious. Anytime you're not in your base, you should have your bunker open. Keeping your bunker open makes things considerably harder for raiders to know that anything's going on there, however, means they can come into your base. To fix that, we're going to use a shotgun trap. Coming over here and placing it so that it is coming up like this, you're going to want to make sure your bunker is open when you place this. That means that when you place it, you're going to be able to still replace your bunker every time, and if it doesn't work, you simply pick up the shotgun trap and try again. With that armed, anytime anybody jumps over this, it's going to trigger that shotgun trap, shooting out this twig at the same time. If that twig gets shot out, they get trapped inside and probably killed by the shotgun trap, but at the very least trapped inside. Taking that a step further, if someone tries to rocket in through, it'll actually seal the bunker for you. And if you've upgraded this entire area to metal, that's going to make the cost of getting through here considerably harder. Of course, for you, reopening the bunker would be as simple as spawning back inside, placing our new twig pieces, and reopening the bunker. Now, one part of this build that I didn't touch on earlier that I really should have is honeycombing the roof of this base. As with any honeycomb 2x2, especially a bunkered base, you need to make sure you honeycomb the roof. However, when working with a bunker, things get a little complicated. You'll notice with this last infill piece that it causes the roof to snap up. This actually means that the roof would no longer open inside. In order to combat this, we have to make sure that we honeycomb this without that interior piece. Any wall or anything in this socket, even a doorway, will 100% interfere with the bunker mechanic. So just make sure that when you're building the honeycomb on the roof, we don't fill that socket and we just seal in the rest. Ultimately, for how small it is, the security that you get out of this base is incredible. Not only acting as an incredible deterrent for most people wanting to raid you, this base will give you a functional area that you could live your entire wipe out of. And if you're worried about getting raided, having multiple of these bases would not be hard to keep at all. After all, even with a metal center and an outer shell of stone, the upkeep of this base is beyond reasonable. Switching out that metal frags for high qual metal, or even moving that metal frags to the outer layer, this base becomes up to a 23 rocket raid just to get inside, and that's not even including getting all the loot or getting the TC. If you're looking for a way to quickly upgrade this base from stone to metal without putting all of your eggs in one basket, you might want to check out my furnace base design. By clicking that card in the top right corner, I'm going to show you a base that you can live out of while providing you the security to cook up all of the resources without having to be on guard duty all day. Of course, if you guys like this video, make sure to click that button as it does help out the channel quite a bit. Until next time, have a safe wipe and peace out.